Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, let's return to the big political story of the week, Thursday's local elections in parts of England. Here's Greg Dawson to tell us how it unfolded.
It's almost 6 a.m. Hugh Edwards and co have just pulled an all-nighter. Lots of results still to come, but what does the BBC's political editor make of things so far?
How was it, Laura?
I ate lots of Twixes. What I think is interesting, and we're not finished, we haven't got all the results. The interesting thing to me is every time we've gone for an overnight programme in 2015, 16, 17, we've ended up with a result that we haven't necessarily expected. And something dramatic has changed. And actually, to me, in a way, nothing really dramatic has changed. And people have sort of said, OK, status quo. We've seen some entrenching of the trends of the general election, and that's interesting.
So, at just gone 6:30 in the morning, the best thing to do with local elections is avoid the big sweeping statements and actually head out to some of the areas where the results are coming in. That's what we're going to do over the next 12 hours or so, along with producer Lucy. Our first stop isn't that far away. Told you it wasn't far. Now, the reason we've come here is that there was some talk before this election that Labour could pull off the extraordinary feat of winning Westminster Council for the first time. That hasn't happened, but probably more disappointing for Labour is that just down the river in Wandsworth they were hoping to take control for the first time in 40 years, and the Tories have held on. Now, all of that isn't to say it's been a bad night for Labour in London.
Far from it. They may not have pinched any London councils from the Tories, but overall this was still Labour's best result in the capital since the early 1970s.
We've come for some breakfast in Southwark, home to the Shard, London Bridge, and now for the first time, no Tory councillors. Labour are expected to do well here, and they've won really big. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
24.
And are you a Labour voter?
Yeah.
Would you ever be tempted to vote for the Tories? Is there anything that they could do?
No, not after the last, well, post-coalition particularly, but coalition as well. I thought it was awful, so no. Particularly after what they've done for students as well, so no.
Around the time we were enjoying breakfast, Jeremy Corbyn showed up in Plymouth, where Labour had won the council there from the Tories.
And across the country, we've made a lot of progress in a lot of places. Obviously, we want to do as well as we possibly can everywhere.
Back in London, we were heading southwest to the story of a mini revival.
Well, the signs say it all. For the first time in a long time, some good election news for the Lib Dems. They are winning here. They've won Richmond Borough Council for the first time since 2010. Even the party weren't expecting that result.
The Lib Dems also won back Kingston from the Tories and managed to hold on in neighbouring Sutton. Time for us to get out of London and head north.
If we get there in the next hour...
There's a count going on in Milton Keynes, and we've just been told to expect the results at about 1 o'clock, so it's going to be tight.
OK, so we've made it to Milton Keynes, hopefully in time for the declaration. Let's go.
And just to add to the excitement, there was a short delay for several recounts.
There's not much happening.
Milton Keynes is finally balanced. Before the election, both the Tories and Labour had 22 councillors each.
And I do hereby declare that Alan Roy Rankin is duly elected.
In the end, the authority remained under no overall control, but the Tories ended up with the most councillors, something for them to shout about.
Largest party!
Our next stop was 80 miles up the road to the West Midlands, but traffic problems forced us onto the train. Our destination, Dudley, one of the several small towns across England where the Tories had outperformed Labour, and where they're expecting a visitor.
A lot of people before these elections were talking down the Conservative chances, but it looks like the Prime Minister's fairly relieved today.
What we have seen up and down the country is people recognising that it's Conservative councils that provide them with good local services, with better delivery of local services, but also keep council taxes low.
And what we have also seen in Dudley and other places is a collapse in support for UKIP, whose General Secretary, perhaps the most eyebrow-raising soundbite of the day, compared his party to the Black Death.
you voted for UKIP before, but you've changed now to the Tories.
Yeah. You have to sort of question what is their like reason for existing at the moment. You know, I mean, yeah, they'll get the Brexit vote, but like now, I don't know. I think they've sort of fallen away, haven't they? They've got poor leadership as well, haven't they, at the moment?
OK, it is almost 6 p.m. 12 hours of politics is quite enough for one day. Let's go home.
Greg Dawson reporting there. And it's been claimed since Thursday that those results show all sorts of things, including the suggestion that some voters were backing specific kinds of Brexit. And to discuss that, I'm joined now from Nottingham by the pro-European Conservative MP Anna Soubry. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Morning.
It was very clear that the Conservatives did better in Leave areas, picked up votes from UKIP voters, and did less well in Remain areas. So do these results tell you that voters were asking you to deliver on the kind of Brexit they thought they voted for?
No, not at all. I think it's very dangerous to extrapolate too much from these results. The small number, really, of elections, just in England, of course. And my experience is that people actually voted for bins rather than Brexit. And I think Brandon Lewis, our party chairman, conducted a cracking campaign. And what I saw was good, sensible, moderate Tories getting out with proud records in their areas, often with councils that they could absolutely defend. I think the real story is about Labour. I mean, look at Derby, where Labour lost seats. Look at Haringey, where, again, Labour lost seats. And, of course, they didn't make the advances that they thought they were going to do in other parts of London.
Well, looking at Labour's performance, Boris Johnson came up with a particular analysis of this, and he says that Jeremy Corbyn's been abandoned in Leave areas because of his pledge to stay in the customs union, and it's the Prime Minister's Mansion House vision for leaving the single market and leaving the customs union that was a key part of the Tories' electoral success, he said.
Yeah, well, you see, Boris's problem is he doesn't come to Amber Valley because, of course, I'm now being very sarcastic. They talk of nothing else in Amber Valley than the customs union and the Mansion House speech. I mean, you know, get real. Let's really look at what's happened. Actually, I think also, very importantly, we do have to look at Richmond. We have to look at South Cambridgeshire, for example, where Conservatives lost, and those were in high Remain areas. And, of course, you know, look at Wandsworth. We nearly lost it, but we had some excellent, moderate, sensible, hugely competent Conservative candidates with a proud record. That's what they campaigned on, and we saw off Labour, but it was very tight in Wandsworth. So there are some lessons to be learned, but I really do think we all have to put our sensible hats on. And as I say, it was bins, not Brexit, that won it for the Tories.
Well, except you seem to be suggesting there that the Conservatives have to worry about resurgent Liberal Democrats in Remain areas, which is what you were referring to. Are you suggesting that the Conservatives would do better electorally if they were campaigning for a softer Brexit, like you were asking for?
Of course. I believe very strongly that you win in British politics, probably as you do anywhere in modern democracies, when you are in the centre ground. Look, there's a lot of nonsense being spoken. No disrespect to Melanie Phillips, but very interestingly, she said, if we are in the customs union, then, of course, we still have to take the rules of the single market. I mean, this is the sort of factual nonsenses that are being put out there, and it's very important that we put the facts out there. I don't care what you call it. I don't care whether you call it a customs union, an arrangement, a partnership, which, of course, is the new model. It's what it delivers that matters. And now, as I accept that we are leaving the European Union, we want the very best deal for our economy, because that's what wins elections, when you deliver competence on the economy, because that cuts across everybody in our country. And that's why we need tariff-free, frictionless trade. And I believe we want EFTA and the EEA, and I believe a large number of my colleagues on the backbenches agree with that. And if we had a free vote, we'd win it. The British people would say, thank God, we can move on. That, of course, is
the problem the Prime Minister has, which is she is between the rock of the Cabinet, who are not in favour at the moment of the customs partnership, and the hard place of Parliament, where you believe there are votes for staying in the customs union. How can Theresa May possibly come up with a solution that will satisfy rebels like you in Parliament, where you think you've got a majority for staying in the customs union, and harder Brexiteers in the Cabinet who wouldn't even accept the customs partnership?
She has to see off a very small number of people in the parliamentary party who operate as a party within a party, who don't just not represent Conservative members, they do not represent Conservative voters, and they do not represent the country at large. These are ideologues. Nothing and no one will stop in their way. And you hear this when they talk this stuff about, oh, we would still be in the European Union if we have a proper customs arrangement. No, what we need now, we're leaving the European Union, is to put our economy first and foremost, and peace in Northern Ireland, and not their ideology. That must be put to one side. And Theresa, who has more than the ability to do this, she must lead us now to a sensible Brexit. I mean, Tom Newton-Dunn is absolutely right. We're still talking about it when we actually should be negotiating with Brussels.
Now, Greg Clark, Cabinet Minister, was on television this morning advocating the idea of a customs partnership, which, as you know, is where we would collect tariffs on goods coming into the UK and pass them on to the EU. It's a closer arrangement with the European Union, and it's one that the harder Brexiteers are very opposed to. Is it one you could live with?
Well, to be honest with you, one of the problems we have is we don't know the detail of it. I was listening, obviously, I listened to Greg Clark. He's eminently sensible and he represents British business. He knows what's in their best interests. I listened to the wise words of Vicky Ford, for example, who used to be an MEP, who knows about these things. It's not just about the collection of tariffs. It's also got to deliver frictionless trade, which I believe I'm told it does. And, of course, it takes regulatory alignment, which is part of that frictionless trade. Look, I don't care what the detail, it's what it delivers. And if it delivers what British business needs and wants, then it's good enough for me. And if it delivers and maintains peace in Northern Ireland, it's certainly good enough for me. So I'm more than willing to compromise. I'm a pragmatic Conservative, like the majority. The PM has got to sort out and see off these ideologues who are blighting our party and blighting the Brexit process, in my opinion.
I assume you're talking about the likes of Jacob Rees-Mogg there. He's come out this morning and said, again, that he doesn't believe the customs partnership would work and that it's not acceptable. He represents a sizable body of opinion in the party and amongst your supporters, though, doesn't he?
No, not at all. He represents Jacob Rees-Mogg and the... what do they call themselves? The European
Reform
Research Group, the otherwise known as the Economic Destruction Group. Look, I'm sorry, I don't think that these are ideologues. I don't think they represent the best interests of British business, and therefore our economy, and therefore the people of our country. And Theresa needs to sort them out and see them off.
You've said before they should be slung out of the party. Do you still think that?
Now, I know said that the ERG should be slung out of the party. I did speak about people who I really don't think are real Conservatives, and I think they've done great harm to a succession of Conservative leaders over many decades, including, for example, John Major. And I think Theresa now has the opportunity to put our party where it should be, in the centre ground of British politics. And if she's true to her wonderful words when she got elected as leader on Downing Street, she will be that Prime Minister, especially with the Labour Party absolutely in hock now to the hard left.
All right, Anna Soubry, thank you very much for talking to us.